What if the sands of time could whisper the very blueprint of life? What if ancient mummies held not just secrets of their afterlife, but the genetic code of an entire civilization? Unravel the profound mysteries encoded within the DNA of the ancient Egyptians. The origins of ancient Egyptian civilization, a tapestry woven from diverse threads across millennia, trace back not to a single event but to a gradual coalescence of agricultural practices, social structures, and spiritual beliefs along the fertile banks of the Nile River. Before the rise of pharaohs and monumental architecture, disparate prehistoric cultures flourished, laying the groundwork for what would become one of the world's most enduring and fascinating societies. The earliest evidence points to nomadic hunter-gatherer groups that began to settle as early as the Paleolithic period, drawn by the predictable cycles of the Nile's inundation, which deposited rich, black silt ideal for cultivation. This shift from a nomadic existence to sedentary agriculture, often referred to as the Neolithic Revolution, was a pivotal moment. Communities in regions like the Fayum Oasis and Marimd Beni Salama developed sophisticated farming techniques, cultivating emmer wheat and barley, and domesticating animals such as goats, sheep, and cattle. These early agriculturalists, while seemingly simple compared to later dynastic Egyptians, demonstrated remarkable ingenuity. Their settlements reveal the beginnings of communal organization, with evidence of rudimentary housing, storage pits for grain, and specialized tools made from flint and bone. The Badarian culture, emerging around 4400 BCE, represents a significant leap forward, characterized by distinctive pottery, often thin-walled and polished to a red-black sheen, and the first clear signs of social stratification through burial practices. Elaborate burials, containing grave goods like ivory combs, cosmetic palettes, and finely crafted beads, suggest a belief in an afterlife and the emergence of individuals with elevated status within their communities. This period also saw the development of more complex craft technologies, indicating a growing specialization of labor and the exchange of goods over considerable distances, hinting at nascent trade networks. The Amratian, Naqada I, and Gurzian, Naqada II, cultures further refined these developments, expanding the territorial reach of Proto-Egyptian civilization. Naqada II, in particular, witnessed a dramatic increase in population density, the growth of larger settlements, and the consolidation of political power into regional centers. These proto-states, often centered around powerful figures, began to control resources and labor, leading to the construction of more substantial mud brick buildings and the production of increasingly sophisticated artifacts, including ceremonial palettes and mace heads decorated with scenes that foreshadow dynastic iconography. The development of writing, initially pictographic, also began in this period, driven by the need for administrative record-keeping and possibly religious inscription. As these regional entities vied for dominance, the stage was set for the eventual unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, an event traditionally attributed to King Menes or Narmer, marking the dawn of the early dynastic period. The cultural practices, technological innovations, and social hierarchies established during these formative millennia provided the essential foundation upon which the grandeur of ancient Egypt would be built, a testament to the persistent human drive for organization, belief, and artistic expression in the fertile cradle of the Nile Valley. The early dynastic period, spanning roughly from 3100 to 2686 BCE, represents a pivotal era in ancient Egyptian history, marking the transition from fragmented proto-states to a unified, centralized kingdom under the rule of the First and Second Dynasties. This period, though less visibly monumental than the later Old Kingdom, laid the essential administrative, religious, and artistic foundations that would characterize Egyptian civilization for millennia. The unification itself was not a sudden event but the culmination of centuries of cultural and political consolidation, traditionally symbolized by the legendary figure of Menes, often identified with Narmer, whose Narmer palette depicts the triumph of a king over his northern foes, visually cementing the concept of a united Upper and Lower Egypt. This political consolidation led to the establishment of a powerful central government, with Memphis, strategically located at the junction of the two lands, emerging as the capital. The pharaoh, now seen as a divine ruler, a living embodiment of Horus, presided over an increasingly complex bureaucracy. This administrative system was crucial for managing resources, organizing labor for large-scale projects, and collecting taxes, primarily in the form of agricultural produce. The pharaoh's power was absolute, underpinned by a sophisticated religious ideology that intertwined the ruler's destiny with the well-being of the entire land. Innovations in writing flourished during this time, moving beyond simple pictograms to a more formalized hieroglyphic script, capable of expressing complex ideas and serving administrative, religious, and historical purposes. Scribes became an essential class, meticulously recording everything from inventories of goods to royal decrees and religious texts. Architectural developments also saw significant strides. While the iconic pyramids were yet to emerge, the mastaba tomb, a rectangular, flat-roofed structure with sloping sides, became the standard burial monument for the elite. These mastabas, particularly those at Abydos and Saqqara, grew in size and complexity, evolving from simple mud brick structures to more elaborate constructions incorporating stone elements. The tomb of Jur, from the First Dynasty, for instance, included a large number of subsidiary burials, perhaps of retainers sacrificed to accompany the king into the afterlife, highlighting the immense power and sacred nature of the early pharaohs. The artistry of the period also blossomed, characterized by a distinctive style that emphasized formality, proportion, and symbolic representation, setting the aesthetic standards for subsequent eras. Sculptors crafted striking figures of rulers and deities, often imbued with a sense of eternal serenity and power. Craftspeople produced exquisite objects from precious materials, including gold, ivory, and imported woods, demonstrating advanced metallurgical and carving skills. Trade networks, both internal along the Nile and external with regions like the Levant and Nubia, expanded significantly, providing Egypt with raw materials and luxury goods. The organization of society became more stratified, with the pharaoh at the apex, followed by high officials, priests, scribes, artisans, and then the vast agricultural labor force. The early dynastic period, therefore, was not merely a prelude to the golden age of the Old Kingdom. It was a dynamic era of fundamental institutional and cultural creation, shaping the very identity of ancient Egypt and establishing the enduring framework for its subsequent development as a unified and self-aware civilization. The Old Kingdom, spanning from approximately 2686 to 2181 BCE, stands as one of the most remarkable periods in ancient Egyptian history, epitomizing an era of unparalleled architectural ambition, robust centralized governance, and profound spiritual conviction. Often referred to as the Age of Pyramids, this period witnessed the construction of the iconic monumental tombs that have captivated humanity for millennia, testament to the immense power of the pharaohs and the highly organized society they commanded. The Third Dynasty inaugurated this era with King Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara, designed by the brilliant vizier Imhotep. This innovative structure, built entirely of stone, was not merely a tomb but a complex funerary precinct, marking a revolutionary leap from earlier mud brick mastabas and demonstrating a mastery of engineering and architectural planning previously unseen. It set a precedent for the subsequent dynasties, culminating in the Fourth Dynasty with the construction of the Great Pyramids of Giza for kings Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. These colossal structures were not only engineering marvels, precisely aligned with astronomical phenomena, but also powerful symbols of the pharaoh's divine authority and his role as an intermediary between the human and divine realms. Their construction required an unprecedented mobilization of resources, labor, and administrative oversight, reflecting a highly centralized state capable of directing thousands of skilled craftsmen, laborers, and support personnel. The pharaoh, at the apex of this system, was considered a living god, the son of Ra, whose eternal well-being was intrinsically linked to the prosperity of Egypt. This divine kingship formed the ideological bedrock of the Old Kingdom, justifying the pharaoh's absolute power and the monumental efforts dedicated to his afterlife. Beneath the pharaoh, a sophisticated bureaucracy developed, headed by the vizier, who managed the vast array of state affairs, including taxation, justice, irrigation, and public works. Provincial governors, known as nomarchs, administered the various nomes, provinces, of Egypt, ensuring the collection of taxes and the implementation of royal decrees. The Old Kingdom also saw the flourishing of art and literature, characterized by a formal, idealized style that sought to capture eternal truths and the divine order. Relief carvings and statues depicted pharaohs and high officials with an idealized serenity, emphasizing their timeless nature and connection to the gods. Hieroglyphic texts, primarily found in tombs and temples, recorded religious rituals, historical events, and administrative details, providing invaluable insights into their worldview. Religious beliefs centered around the sun god Ra and the afterlife, with the pharaoh's pyramid serving as a celestial ladder to join the gods. The concept of Ma'at, representing cosmic order, justice, and truth, pervaded all aspects of society, guiding royal decree and individual conduct. While the focus on royal tombs might suggest a solely top-down society, the Old Kingdom also fostered a stable agricultural base, with the Nile's predictable inundations ensuring bountiful harvests that supported the massive building projects and a complex social hierarchy. The efficiency of the administration in managing these resources and the labor force was critical to the sustained prosperity and monumental achievements of this formative era, establishing a legacy of grandeur and centralized power that would profoundly influence all subsequent periods of ancient Egyptian civilization. The First Intermediate Period, stretching from approximately 2181 to 2055 BCE, represents a significant departure from the centralized stability of the Old Kingdom, characterized by a fragmentation of royal authority and the rise of powerful regional nomarchs. This era, often depicted as a time of chaos and decline, was in fact a complex period of adaptation, decentralization, and cultural evolution, demonstrating the resilience of Egyptian society in the face of political upheaval. The collapse of the Old Kingdom's central government was not sudden but a gradual process, likely triggered by a combination of factors. The immense resources expended on pyramid construction over centuries may have strained the royal treasury. More significantly, the growing power and autonomy of provincial nomarchs, who had become hereditary rulers in their nomes, began to erode the pharaoh's direct control. These nomarchs, once royal appointees, gradually amassed wealth, land, and military influence, establishing local courts and bureaucracies that rivaled those of the central government. Environmental factors, such as sustained low Nile floods, could have exacerbated these issues, leading to agricultural shortages and further undermining the pharaoh's perceived ability to maintain cosmic order and provide for his people. With the weakening of the central authority, Egypt effectively split into numerous semi-independent states, each governed by its nomarch. The traditional capital, Memphis, lost its preeminence, and various regional power centers emerged, most notably Heracleopolis in Lower Egypt and Thebes in Upper Egypt. These two cities became the focal points of competing dynasties, with the Heracleopolitan kings attempting to assert control over the north and the Theban rulers gradually expanding their influence over the south. This political fragmentation led to localized conflicts and rivalries, but it also fostered a vibrant period of regional cultural expression. Without the strictures of a powerful central court, artistic and literary styles diversified. Provincial workshops produced distinct forms of art, and local cults gained prominence, often blending with traditional state deities. The funerary beliefs, once heavily centered on the pharaoh's role in the afterlife, became more democratized. The pyramid texts, previously reserved for royal burials, began to appear in adapted forms in the tombs of non-royal elites, evolving into the coffin texts. This democratization of the afterlife suggests a broader desire for personal salvation and reflects a shift in religious thought, where individuals had a more direct relationship with the divine. Despite the political disunity, the fundamental institutions of Egyptian society persisted. Agriculture continued to be the backbone of the economy, and local administrations ensured that irrigation systems were maintained. Trade, though perhaps more localized, still flowed along the Nile. The First Intermediate Period, therefore, was not merely an interlude of disorder but a dynamic phase of transition, where the established paradigms of centralized power gave way to a more decentralized, yet resilient, system. It was a time when the strength of regional identities was asserted, ultimately setting the stage for the eventual reunification of Egypt under a new, powerful dynasty that would learn from the lessons of fragmentation and usher in a new era of prosperity and stability. The Middle Kingdom, spanning from approximately 2055 to 1650 BCE, marks a period of profound revival and transformation in ancient Egyptian history, characterized by a renewed emphasis on centralized authority, territorial expansion, and a distinctive flourishing of art, literature, and religious thought. This era, often considered a classical age, built upon the foundations of the Old Kingdom but introduced significant innovations, forging a more nuanced and introspective civilization. The reunification of Egypt, following the fragmentation of the First Intermediate Period, was achieved by Mentuhotep II of the 11th dynasty, who, ruling from Thebes, ultimately defeated his rivals and re-established a single monarchy. His successors, particularly the pharaohs of the 12th dynasty, Amenemhat I to Amenemhat III, consolidated this power, moving the capital to Ichtoi, near the Fayum, a strategic location that allowed for closer control over both Upper and Lower Egypt. These pharaohs, perhaps learning from the pitfalls of the Old Kingdom, projected an image of powerful yet accessible rulers, often depicted in their statuary with a more careworn, realistic expression, hinting at the burdens of kingship. This period saw a significant expansion of state-sponsored infrastructure projects, most notably in the Fayum, where vast irrigation schemes were undertaken to reclaim land for agriculture, boosting the kingdom's economic prosperity and demonstrating the government's capacity for large-scale planning and execution. Militarily, the Middle Kingdom was expansionist, particularly into Nubia, modern-day Sudan, where a series of formidable fortresses were built to secure lucrative gold mines and control trade routes. These campaigns extended Egypt's southern borders further than ever before, illustrating a shift towards a more proactive foreign policy aimed at securing resources and asserting dominance. The bureaucracy of the Middle Kingdom became even more sophisticated, with a clear hierarchy of officials, scribes, and administrators managing the kingdom's affairs. The office of the vizier remained central, but other key positions, such as the overseer of the treasury and the overseer of granaries, gained prominence, reflecting the increasing complexity of state administration. Culturally, the Middle Kingdom is renowned for its literary output. A new genre of wisdom literature emerged, offering moral and practical advice, often presented as instructions from a king to his son. The story of Sinew and the tale of the shipwrecked sailor are examples of sophisticated narrative prose that reflect a growing appreciation for individual experience and psychological depth. Art also evolved, retaining the formality of the Old Kingdom but incorporating new themes and a greater sense of naturalism in some depictions. Royal portraiture, as mentioned, became more nuanced, and private tomb decoration often featured scenes of daily life, offering glimpses into the lives of non-royal elites. Religious thought underwent significant development, with the god Osiris gaining immense popularity, especially among the common people. His myth, centered on death, resurrection, and judgment, offered hope for an afterlife to a broader segment of society, moving beyond the pharaoh-centric theology of earlier periods. This democratization of religious beliefs and funerary practices, with a widespread use of coffin texts and the development of Shabti figures, characterized a more inclusive approach to salvation. The Middle Kingdom, therefore, was a dynamic period that refined the administrative, artistic, and religious traditions of Egypt, creating a rich cultural legacy that would serve as a benchmark for future generations, while also demonstrating the capacity for a powerful state to rebound and redefine itself after a period of decentralization. The Second Intermediate Period, roughly from 1650 to 1550 BCE, represents another phase of fragmentation and foreign influence in ancient Egyptian history, following the stability and prosperity of the Middle Kingdom. Unlike the First Intermediate Period, which saw internal breakdown, this era is most notably defined by the emergence of the Hyksos, a group of foreign rulers from Western Asia who established a dynasty in the northern Nile Delta. This period, while initially perceived as a dark age of foreign domination, was also a crucible of significant cultural exchange and technological advancement, reshaping the trajectory of Egyptian civilization. The decline of the Middle Kingdom was likely a gradual process, possibly initiated by a succession of weaker pharaohs and exacerbated by the increasing number of foreign settlers and traders in the Nile Delta, particularly from the Levant. These groups, often referred to collectively as Hyksos, meaning rulers of foreign lands, gradually consolidated power in the northeastern delta, establishing their capital at Avaris. The Hyksos did not conquer Egypt in a single, decisive invasion. Rather, their ascendancy was a slow process of political and military encroachment, taking advantage of a weakening central authority. They eventually controlled Lower Egypt, while native Egyptian rulers, the 17th dynasty, maintained control in Upper Egypt, based in Thebes. There was also a buffer state in the central part of Egypt, further illustrating the fragmentation. Nubian groups, emboldened by Egyptian weakness, also reasserted their independence and even expanded their territory to the south. Despite being foreign rulers, the Hyksos adopted many aspects of Egyptian culture, including pharaonic titles, administrative practices, and religious traditions, even if they introduced some of their own deities. This cultural syncretism was a defining feature of the period. However, their most significant impact was technological. The Hyksos introduced advanced military technologies to Egypt, including the composite bow, vastly superior to the traditional Egyptian simple bow, and, most importantly, the horse-drawn war chariot. They also brought new metallurgical techniques, improving the production of bronze weaponry. These innovations dramatically transformed Egyptian warfare, setting the stage for the military might of the subsequent New Kingdom. Beyond military technology, the Hyksos facilitated the introduction of new crops, animals, and musical instruments, enriching Egyptian culture in diverse ways. Trade flourished between Egypt and the Near East under Hyksos rule, as Avaris became a bustling cosmopolitan center, a melting pot of cultures. This direct interaction exposed Egyptians to a broader world and a wider array of foreign ideas and goods. While the Theban 17th dynasty initially paid tribute to the Hyksos, a spirit of resistance eventually emerged. Kings like Seqenenretau and Kamose fought against the Hyksos, laying the groundwork for the final expulsion. The struggle was ideological as much as military, with the Theban rulers asserting their role as the legitimate heirs of the ancient pharaohs and champions of Egyptian identity. The Second Intermediate Period, therefore, was a complex era that, despite its political disunity and foreign presence, proved to be a transformative phase. It forced Egyptian society to adapt, absorb new technologies, and ultimately forge a stronger, more outward-looking national identity, preparing it for the imperial ambitions that would define the upcoming New Kingdom. The New Kingdom, spanning from approximately 1550 to 1070 BCE, represents the zenith of ancient Egyptian power, influence, and imperial ambition. Following the expulsion of the Hyksos, a unified Egypt, tempered by foreign occupation and armed with new military technologies, embarked on an era of unprecedented territorial expansion, monumental construction, and cultural efflorescence. The 18th dynasty, heralded by pharaohs like Ahmose I, who completed the expulsion of the Hyksos, and Amenhotep I, laid the groundwork for this imperial age. Thutmose first launched campaigns deep into Nubia and the Levant, establishing Egypt as a dominant force. His successors, particularly Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of Egypt, carved out a vast empire, stretching from Syria in the north to the Fourth Cataract of the Nile in the south. This expansion was driven by a desire for security against future invasions and, crucially, access to vital resources such as timber, copper, and gold. The empire brought immense wealth into Egypt, primarily through tribute from conquered territories and control over lucrative trade routes. This affluence fueled an unparalleled building program. Karnak and Luxor became monumental temple complexes, dedicated to the state god Amoni-Asare, whose priesthood grew immensely powerful. Valley of the Kings became the royal necropolis, a hidden burial ground designed to protect royal tombs from robbers, a stark contrast to the conspicuous pyramids of the Old Kingdom. Notable pharaohs like Hatshepsut, a powerful female ruler who reigned as pharaoh, oversaw flourishing trade expeditions and magnificent architectural projects, including her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. Her reign marked a period of stability and economic prosperity. Amenhotep III, known for his opulent court and diplomatic correspondence with other Near Eastern powers, the Amarna letters, presided over a period of unparalleled artistic refinement and international prestige. However, it was his son, Akhenaten, Amenhotep IV, who triggered one of the most radical, albeit short-lived, religious revolutions in Egyptian history. Akhenaten abandoned the traditional polytheistic religion, suppressed the cult of Ammonius, and promoted the worship of a single, albeit not fully monotheistic, deity, the Aten, the sun disk. He moved the capital to a newly built city, Akhenaten, modern Amarna, and introduced a revolutionary artistic style characterized by greater naturalism and emotional expression, a distinct departure from the rigid conventions of earlier periods. This Amarna period profoundly impacted Egyptian art and religion, though it was largely undone by his successors, particularly Tutankhamun, who restored the old gods and the capital to Thebes. The 19th dynasty, founded by Ramesses I, continued the imperial tradition. Seti I and Ramesses II, the Great, engaged in significant military campaigns, notably against the Hittites, culminating in the Battle of Kadesh, one of the best documented ancient battles. Ramesses II's reign was also marked by prodigious building projects, including the rock-cut temples at Abu Simbel and the Ramesseum. Despite the outward grandeur, the later New Kingdom faced increasing internal and external pressures. The powerful priesthood of Ammonius Ra challenged royal authority, and a series of Sea Peoples invasions destabilized the eastern Mediterranean, impacting Egypt's control over its empire. Economic difficulties, possibly exacerbated by climate change and administrative corruption, began to manifest. The 20th dynasty saw a gradual decline in royal power and imperial reach. Ramesses III, though achieving a significant victory against the Sea Peoples, struggled with internal unrest and economic woes. By the end of the dynasty, Egypt's empire had largely evaporated, and the unified state once again began to fragment, leading into the Third Intermediate Period. The New Kingdom, despite its eventual decline, left an indelible mark on Egyptian civilization, defining its imperial ambitions, shaping its religious landscape, and producing some of its most iconic artistic and architectural achievements, a testament to a period of extraordinary power and cultural dynamism. The late period of ancient Egypt, typically spanning from approximately 664 to 332 BCE, represents a complex and often turbulent era characterized by intermittent periods of native Egyptian rule interspersed with successive waves of foreign domination by powerful Near Eastern empires. Despite these challenges, the period also saw remarkable resilience, cultural revival, and a persistent assertion of Egyptian identity in the face of external pressures. Following the fragmentation of the Third Intermediate Period, Egypt was divided among various local rulers and Libyan chieftains. The unification of Egypt under the 26th dynasty, known as the Sate dynasty, marked a brief but significant resurgence of native Egyptian power. Psamtik I, with the aid of Greek and Carian mercenaries, expelled the Nubian rulers of the 25th dynasty and re-established a centralized state with its capital at Sais in the Delta. The Sate pharaohs consciously looked back to the glories of the Old Kingdom, initiating an artistic and cultural renaissance known as the Sate Revival. Art from this period emulated the elegant, refined styles of earlier dynastic periods, striving for a classicism that harkened back to a golden age. There was also a renewed emphasis on traditional religious practices and the study of ancient texts. Economically, the Sate dynasty fostered trade, particularly with the burgeoning Greek city-states, and encouraged the settlement of Greek merchants and mercenaries in Egypt, notably at Naucratis. This openness to foreign interaction brought new ideas and economic opportunities, but also made Egypt more susceptible to external influences. However, this period of native revival was short-lived. The growing power of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and then, more critically, the Achaemenid Persian Empire posed an existential threat. In 525 BCE, Cambyses II of Persia conquered Egypt, incorporating it into the vast Persian Empire as a satrapy province. This marked the beginning of the 27th dynasty, a period of direct Persian rule. The Persian kings, while generally respecting Egyptian traditions, often imposed their own administrative structures and taxation policies. They built temples to Egyptian gods and were sometimes depicted in pharaonic guise, attempting to legitimize their rule. However, Egyptian resentment simmered beneath the surface, leading to several revolts. These uprisings, often supported by other Mediterranean powers, occasionally succeeded in briefly restoring native Egyptian rule, e.g., the 28th, 29th, and 30th dynasties. The 30th dynasty, under kings like Nectanebo II, was particularly active in temple building and military resistance against the Persians, demonstrating a fierce determination to maintain independence. Despite these intermittent periods of freedom, Egypt remained a coveted prize for major powers. The Persians reconquered Egypt, establishing the 31st dynasty. Throughout these periods of foreign domination, Egyptian religious practices, particularly the cults of Osiris and Isis, remained vibrant and acted as a powerful focus for national identity. The scribal tradition continued, preserving ancient knowledge and transmitting it through generations. While politically fractured or under foreign yoke, the underlying cultural framework of Egypt endured, demonstrating an extraordinary capacity for persistence. The late period, therefore, was a time of immense political flux, with Egypt caught between powerful empires. Yet, it was also a period where Egyptian culture, art, and religion showed a remarkable ability to revive and adapt, proving the deep-seated resilience of a civilization that had already spanned millennia, setting the stage for the next phase of its history under Hellenistic rule. The Ptolemaic dynasty, which governed Egypt from 305 to 30 BCE, represents a fascinating and dynamic period of Hellenistic rule, characterized by a unique fusion of Greek and Egyptian cultures. This era began with the conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great in 332 BCE, who was hailed as a liberator from Persian rule and founded the city of Alexandria. Following Alexander's premature death, his empire was divided among his generals, and Ptolemy I Soter, one of his most trusted companions, established himself as ruler of Egypt, eventually declaring himself pharaoh in 305 BCE. The Ptolemies, a Greek-speaking Macedonian dynasty, ruled Egypt as pharaohs, adopting many of the traditional trappings of Egyptian kingship. They were depicted in Egyptian style on temple walls, participated in Egyptian religious festivals, and supported Egyptian cults. Yet, they simultaneously maintained a distinctly Greek identity, promoting Hellenistic culture, language, and administration. Alexandria, their capital, became the largest and most vibrant city in the Hellenistic world, a multicultural metropolis renowned for its magnificent library and its lighthouse, Pharaohs, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Library of Alexandria was a beacon of intellectual activity, attracting scholars from across the Mediterranean and beyond, fostering advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. The city also served as a major center for trade, art, and science, benefiting from Egypt's fertile agricultural land and strategic location. Economically, the Ptolemies implemented a highly centralized and exploitative system. The fertile Nile Valley was primarily used to produce grain, which was then exported to feed the growing populations of the Mediterranean world, especially Rome. This revenue stream, combined with taxes on virtually every aspect of economic activity, made Ptolemaic Egypt immensely wealthy. The administration was a complex bureaucracy, largely run by Greek-speaking officials, which often led to friction with the native Egyptian population. Culturally, the Ptolemaic period saw the creation of new syncretic deities, such as Serapis, a blend of Egyptian Osiris and Apis with Greek Zeus and Hades, designed to appeal to both Greek and Egyptian subjects. Temples were built in a distinctly Egyptian style, often on a grand scale, but with Hellenistic architectural flourishes. The Temple of Horus at Edfu and the Temple of Isis at Philae are prime examples of the impressive religious architecture of this era, reflecting the Ptolemies' efforts to legitimize their rule in the eyes of their Egyptian subjects. Royal incest, a practice common in earlier pharaonic dynasties, was adopted by the Ptolemies, further attempting to connect themselves to their Egyptian predecessors. Famous figures like Cleopatra VII, the last active ruler of the dynasty, embodied this cultural fusion. She was the first Ptolemaic ruler to learn to speak Egyptian, strategically aligning herself with both her Macedonian heritage and her Egyptian subjects in her efforts to maintain Egypt's independence against the rising power of Rome. Despite the economic prosperity and cultural vibrancy, the Ptolemaic dynasty eventually succumbed to internal strife, economic mismanagement, and the ever-encroaching influence of the Roman Republic. Cleopatra's alliances with Roman generals Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were ultimately unsuccessful in preserving the kingdom. Her defeat at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE and subsequent suicide in 30 BCE marked the end of an independent Hellenistic Egypt and its absorption into the Roman Empire, concluding a remarkable period of cultural synthesis that forever altered the genetic and cultural landscape of the Nile Valley. Roman Egypt, from 30 BCE to 641 CE, represents a distinct phase in the country's long history, transforming it from an independent kingdom into a vital imperial province. Following the defeat of Cleopatra VII and Mark Antony at Actium, Octavian, later Emperor Augustus, annexed Egypt, making it a personal possession of the Roman emperor. This unique status, governed directly by an equestrian prefect rather than a senatorial proconsul, underscored its strategic importance as Rome's breadbasket and a crucial trade hub. Egypt became the primary supplier of grain to feed the burgeoning population of Rome, a role that brought both prosperity and exploitation. The Romans largely maintained the highly centralized and efficient administrative structures established by the Ptolemies, but adapted them to suit their imperial needs. The Roman prefect, often a trusted military commander, oversaw a vast bureaucracy of Roman and Greek officials, who managed taxation, justice, and the crucial grain supply. Roman legions were stationed in Egypt, not only to defend its borders but also to enforce imperial authority and suppress any potential revolts, ensuring the steady flow of resources to Rome. Economically, Roman rule brought new infrastructure projects, including improved irrigation systems and roads, designed to enhance agricultural output and facilitate trade. While the majority of the population, primarily native Egyptians, remained engaged in agriculture, cities like Alexandria continued to thrive as cosmopolitan centers of commerce and culture. Alexandria remained a crucial port, connecting the Mediterranean world with the trade routes to India and Africa, making Egypt a significant crossroads for goods, ideas, and peoples. Culturally, Roman Egypt witnessed a continued blend of indigenous Egyptian, Hellenistic, and Roman influences. The Romans, like the Ptolemies, generally respected Egyptian religious practices, even if they did not actively adopt them as their own. Temples continued to be built in the Egyptian style, often with Roman emperors depicted as pharaohs making offerings to Egyptian gods, a pragmatic approach to legitimacy. However, Roman influence was more pronounced in administrative structures, legal systems, and military organization. The use of Latin became more prevalent in official contexts, though Greek remained the language of administration and culture in Alexandria, and Egyptian, Coptic, continued to be spoken by the native population. The Roman period also saw the introduction of new artistic forms, such as the lifelike Fayum mummy portraits, which combined Roman portraiture with Egyptian funerary customs. These vivid painted panels, attached to mummies, provide an intimate glimpse into the diverse population of Roman Egypt. Perhaps the most significant cultural and religious development of this period was the rise and spread of Christianity. Initially a small sect, Christianity gained increasing adherents among the Egyptian population, eventually supplanting traditional pagan beliefs. The Coptic Church, one of the oldest Christian churches in the world, traces its origins to this era, and monasticism, particularly in the deserts of Upper Egypt, gained immense popularity. The Roman Empire's eventual adoption of Christianity as its state religion further solidified its presence. As the Roman Empire declined, Egypt, like other provinces, faced increasing challenges, including internal unrest, economic pressures, and external threats. It eventually fell under Byzantine rule, and then, in the 7th century CE, succumbed to the Arab conquest, marking the end of its ancient era and ushering in a new chapter as part of the Islamic world. Roman Egypt, therefore, was a period of intense integration into a vast empire, maintaining its unique identity while contributing significantly to the economic and cultural fabric of the Roman world, leaving a lasting legacy of its time as an indispensable imperial province. Decoding the ancient DNA, ADNA, of the inhabitants of ancient Egypt has revolutionized our understanding of their origins, movements, and genetic relationships, offering a powerful new lens through which to examine historical narratives. The methodology for extracting and analyzing ADNA from millennia-old remains is a complex and highly specialized field, fraught with unique challenges that differentiate it significantly from modern DNA sequencing. The primary source material for ancient Egyptian ADNA studies typically consists of bone and teeth, which, due to their dense structure, offer better preservation of genetic material compared to soft tissues. Mummified remains, while iconic, often present additional complications due to the chemical processes involved in mummification, which can degrade DNA or introduce inhibitors to the extraction process. The process begins with meticulous sampling under ultra-clean laboratory conditions to prevent contamination from modern human DNA, which is a pervasive threat and can easily overwhelm the degraded ancient fragments. Researchers wear full protective gear, and dedicated clean rooms are designed with positive air pressure and UV sterilization to minimize environmental contamination. Once a sample is obtained, it undergoes a chemical extraction process to liberate the DNA from the bone matrix. This involves grinding the sample into a fine powder, followed by chemical lysis and purification steps to isolate the DNA fragments. Ancient DNA is typically highly fragmented and present in very low copy numbers, often damaged by environmental factors such as heat, humidity, and microbial activity over centuries. These factors lead to characteristic degradation patterns, including cytosine deamination, which introduces errors during sequencing. To overcome these challenges, next-generation sequencing technologies are employed. These high-throughput methods can sequence millions of small DNA fragments simultaneously. Specialized libraries are prepared from the extracted ADNA, often incorporating molecular tags to track individual samples and minimize cross-contamination. Bioinformatic tools play a crucial role in analyzing the vast amounts of raw sequencing data. They are used to assemble the fragmented reads, identify and correct for damage patterns unique to ADNA, and filter out microbial contamination. The reconstructed ancient genomes or mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, and Y chromosome sequences can then be compared to modern human populations and other ancient samples to infer genetic relationships, migration patterns, and population admixtures. Despite the technological advancements, significant challenges persist. The hot, humid climate of much of Egypt is not ideal for DNA preservation, making it more difficult to obtain viable samples compared to colder, drier environments. Many early studies were limited to mitochondrial DNA, inherited maternally, or Y chromosome DNA, inherited paternally, due to their smaller size and higher copy number, providing insights into maternal and paternal lineages but not the full genome. Recent advances, however, allow for whole genome sequencing of some ancient Egyptian individuals, offering a much richer dataset. Ethical considerations are also paramount. Respect for the deceased and the cultural heritage of modern Egyptians necessitates careful consideration of sample selection and research dissemination. The field of ADNA research in Egypt is continuously evolving, pushing the boundaries of what is possible and providing unprecedented insights into the biological heritage of one of the world's most ancient civilizations, allowing a direct molecular dialogue with the past. The genetic legacy of the ancient Egyptians, revealed through the painstaking work of paleogenomics, offers a compelling molecular narrative that both aligns with and challenges long-held historical and archaeological assumptions. Recent scientific studies utilizing ancient DNA, ADNA, have begun to paint a clearer picture of the genetic makeup of these fascinating people and their relationship to modern populations, demonstrating how genetic threads connect the past to the present. Early genetic studies, often relying on mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, focused on identifying broad maternal lineages. These initial findings generally indicated a strong genetic continuity between ancient Egyptian populations and those of the Near East and North Africa, suggesting that the Nile Valley served as a genetic corridor, facilitating movements and interactions between these regions. More recent and comprehensive studies, however, have leveraged whole genome sequencing, providing a much higher resolution view of ancient Egyptian ancestry. A landmark study published in 2017, which analyzed 90 mummified individuals from a site called Abu Sir el Melek in Middle Egypt, spanning over 1,300 years from the New Kingdom to the Roman period, provided groundbreaking insights. And so, the genetic story of ancient Egypt continues to unfold, connecting us to a civilization that, though long past, still echoes in the modern world. It's a testament to human resilience and continuity. What insights did you find most surprising or compelling? Share your thoughts for future improvements.